The Leipzig War Crimes Trials were a series of trials held in 1921 to try alleged German war criminals of the First World War before the German Reichsgericht in Leipzig, as part of the penalties imposed on the German government under the Treaty of Versailles. Background: during the First World War, the Allied leaders came up with a new concept that once victory was achieved, defeated enemy leaders should face criminal charges for international law violations made during the war. On the 25th of January 1919, during the Paris Peace Conference, the Allied governments established the Commission of Responsibilities to make recommendations to that effect. As a result, Articles 227 to 230 of the Treaty of Versailles stipulated the arrest and trial of German officials defined as war criminals by the Allied governments. Article 227 made provision for the establishment of a special tribunal, presided over by a judge from each one of the major Allied powers: Britain, France, Italy, United States and Japan. It identified the former Kaiser Wilhelm II as a war criminal, and demanded that an extradition request be addressed to the Dutch government, which had given him asylum in the Netherlands since his abdication in November 1918. Article 228 allowed the Allied governments to try German war criminals in the military tribunals, notwithstanding any proceedings taken against the same persons in German courts. The German government was required to comply with any extradition order issued by the Allied powers to that effect. Following the conclusion of the treaty, the Allied government began the legal and diplomatic efforts to arrest the former Kaiser. On the 28th of June 1919, the day the treaty was signed, the president of the Paris Peace Conference addressed a diplomatic note to the Dutch government requesting the extradition of the ex-Kaiser. On the 7th of July, the Dutch replied that any extradition of the Kaiser would be a violation of Dutch neutrality. Eventually, the issue of bringing the ex-Kaiser to trial was dropped, and he remained in the Netherlands until his death on the 4th of June 1941. On the 3rd of February 1920, the Allies submitted a further list of 900 names of individuals accused of committing alleged war crimes to the German government. However, the Germans refused to extradite any German citizens to Allied governments, and suggested instead trying them within the German justice system, i.e. at the Reichsgericht in Leipzig. This proposal was accepted by the Allied leaders, and in May 1920 they handed the German government a reduced list of 45 accused persons. Not all these people could be traced, and in other cases there was difficulty in finding credible evidence. In the end, only 12 individuals were brought to trial. The trials were held before the Reichsgericht in Leipzig from the 23rd of May to the 16th of July 1921. The cases tried were: Sergeant Karl Heinen, charged with mistreating British powers. He was sentenced to a brief prison term of 10 months. Captain Emil Müller, charged with mistreating powers. He was sentenced to 6 months in prison. Private Robert Newman, charged with mistreating prisoners of war. He was sentenced to 6 months in prison. Commander Carl Newman of U-boat UC-67, who sank the hospital ship Dover Castle in compliance with superior orders. He was found not guilty due to the fact that he was following orders. First Lieutenants Ludwig Devmer and John Bolt, charged with war crimes on the high seas. They were 2 officers of the submarine MU-86 that had sunk the Canadian hospital ship Llandovery Castle, and then machine gun survivors in the lifeboats. They were each sentenced to 4 years in prison. The commanding officer, Helmut Brahmer-Patzig, had fled to the free city of Danzig and was never prosecuted. Max Ramdor, charged with crimes against the civilian non-combatants in occupied Belgium. He was found not guilty. Lieutenant General Karl Stenger and Major Benno Crucius, charged with mistreating French powers. Stenger was found not guilty, while Crucius was sentenced to 2 years in prison. First Lieutenant Adolf Lohl, charged with crimes against the civilian population of occupied France. He was found not guilty. Lieutenant General Hans von Schack and Major General Benno Kruska, charged with mistreating powers. Both were found not guilty. Response: outside Germany, the trials were seen as something of a travesty because of the small number of cases tried and the perceived leniency of the court. Inside Germany, on the other hand, they were seen as excessively harsh for several reasons. Of all the belligerents, only German servicemen were being tried, even though numerous Allied servicemen had also committed war crimes. The accused seemed in several cases to have been merely trying to perform their duty under difficult conditions. Several of the charges seemed spurious. Imprisonment in a civil jail was regarded as insulting to military honor. Following the Hainan case, the German Gazette commented, "The first verdict in the series of Leipzig trials has agitated public opinion in 2 great countries, Germany and England, in apparently sharply contrasting ways. The degree of punishment has been criticized in England in a way that is in the highest degree wounding to German susceptibilities." On the 15th of January 1922, a commission of Allied jurists, appointed to inquire into the trials, concluded that it was useless to proceed with them any further and recommended that the remaining accused should be handed over to the Allies for trial. This was not done, and the trials were quietly abandoned. Legacy: although largely regarded as a failure at the time, the Leipzig trials were the first attempt to devise a comprehensive system for prosecution of violations of international law. This trend was renewed during the Second World War as Allied governments decided to try, after the war, defeated Axis leaders for war crimes committed during the war, notably the Nuremberg Trials, an international military tribunal for the Far East. Following the end of the Cold War, the same trend led to the establishment of the International Criminal Court in 2002.